Dear students, once again I would like to welcome all of you to a new session of the history class. Today we are going to continue with the same chapter number 4, second phase of the international movement, part 4. In part 3 we were discussing a few number of points. So before we move to a new topic or before we move to a new part of the chapter, I would like to grab your attention to the previous points which we were discussing in the last class. In the last class, we were focusing on two important points. First one, the assertive phase of nationalism or assertive nationalism. Under this title, we were seeing a few number of points like who were being known as assertive nationalists, what was their main motive, their main philosophy and their main activities, and why they were being known as assertive nationalism. So all those points we were discussing under this particular title. And the second point which we were discussing, causes for the rise of assertive nationalism. What were the different causes? And we have discussed almost 11 important points, and I have explained all those 11 important points very well. And the last point we were discussing was the partition of Bengal. The immediate cause, the important cause behind the emergence of assertive nationalism was partition of Bengal. So all those points we were discussing in the last class. And today we are going to focus on two important points. First one, main objective of assertive nationalist. Assertive nationalist people or ideology was having an important objective, an important aim. And the second one which we are going to discuss is the different methods of the assertive nationalist, which were the methods followed by or used by the assertive nationalists in order to attain the freedom of our country. So these are the two important points which we are going to discuss today. When you have read this point, you may have got an idea about the main objective, which means they were only having one particular intention. They were having only one demand. What was that? Immediate attainment of complete independence. This was the one and only or the ultimate aim of the assertive nationalists, because they were not having a number of objectives, but rather than having number of objectives, they were having only one intention or one objective. That means immediate attainment of complete independence. Now let's see this point in some other words. Like it can be explained like complete freedom and not self-government under the British rule. It is defined in such a way, there is a reason behind it. Because complete freedom, not self-government under the British rule. There is a reason behind it, because early nationalist leaders, they also demanded self-government, but that self-government will be functioned under the British rule. That was their demand. That means early nationalist leaders, they have demanded a self-government which will be functioning under the British rule. But in the case of assertive nationalists, they demanded complete freedom and a government which is not functioning under the British rule. That means if Indians are forming a government, it will be free from all other clutches, all other powers. They will form the government and they will run the government. So it is something different from the demand of the early nationalist leaders. So it was the one and only main objective of assertive nationalists. Now let's move to the main important methods of the assertive nationalist leaders. What were their methods which they have used against the British? Basically there are four different methods followed by the assertive nationalists. First one, Swadeshi movement or Swadeshi ideology of Swadeshi, etc. Second one, boycott also, it was a movement and it was an ideology introduced by the assertive nationalists. Third one, national education should be given to all over India. That means it was not limited for a society or a group, rather than the whole people of the country should be educated. It was one another ideology or a method introduced by the assertive nationalists. And the fourth method adopted by assertive nationalists were passive resistance. Under passive resistance there comes a few number of points like revivalism, personal sacrifice and mass involvement. So we are going to discuss all these points in detail. So the first point is Swadeshi. What is meant by Swadeshi? Producing necessary items in one's own country. And what is the speciality of this one? Have you ever thought why the leaders have implemented such a system in our country, Swadeshi, or producing necessary items in one's own country? I'll explain it with an example. Suppose we will take the example of Patanjali products. What's the speciality of Patanjali products? It's an Indian company. It is producing all the different necessary items in our country by using our raw materials. And what happens? Suppose if all Indians are purchasing items of Patanjali's, then what will happen? The money spent by Indians will be circulating in the Indian economy. In other words, I will explain it in some other words, like suppose I am purchasing some products of Patanjali, then what will happen? I will pay for that. Suppose if I am purchasing toothpaste of Patanjali toothpaste, okay, and I am spending a fixed amount for that, and what happens? They are already getting payment for the product and the benefit also. And what this company is doing, by using the benefit, they are producing some other products. So it is never going outside. Our wealth, our money is circulating in our society itself. But in the case of one another example, when I tell the other example, you will get a clear picture about it. Suppose we would take the example of Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is a multinational company from America. Okay, once when we purchase a Coca-Cola or a can of Coca-Cola, what happens? We are spending money to purchase it, and they are taking that money from India to their country because it's their benefit, and they are taking our money to their country, and by using that product or that benefit, they are making further products and they sell it again in our country. So that's why Swadeshi means it has got a wide range of meaning, producing necessary items in one's own country. And the other important factor is, there is one another side of this this method or this ideology. What is that? Using them for one's use without being dependent on imported good. Means we will be, or in other words, we will become self-reliant or completely free. We will become independent. We need not depend some other country to fulfill our needs. So that's one of the main speciality of Swadeshi. Producing the necessary items in one's own country, economically there is a huge benefit. At the same time, we need not depend some other countries for our daily needs. So these were some of the specialities of Swadeshi. So it was one of the ideology upholded by or put forward by assertive nationalist leaders. So the first method introduced by the assertive nationalists were Swadeshi or Swadeshi movement, Swadeshi method. And the second method we are going to discuss is boycott. What is meant by boycott? Let's see. Swadeshi means saying no to foreign goods, use of Swadeshi goods. So the last point which we are discussing, Swadeshi and boycott, can be considered as the two sides of the same coin, because once if we are depending on our Swadeshi products, we must say no to foreign goods. Or if we are purchasing foreign goods, we must say no to our Swadeshi products. So that's why if one is existing, the other also will be there. If the other is existing, the first will not be there. So that's why it can be said like two sides of the same coin. If Swadeshi is there, definitely boycott also will be there. If boycott is there, definitely we will say no to Swadeshi. So saying no to foreign goods, at the same time use of Swadeshi goods. And again, advantage, what were the different advantages of boycott? Encourage the Indian industries. We have seen during the time of British, in the first centuries of the administration of the British, or in other words after the first war of independence 1857, we have seen there was a big failure of industries in India due to the different policies followed by the British. But now when the leaders they have put forward the ideology of Swadeshi and boycott. It encouraged Indian industries. Numerous people have got job opportunities. When new different industries set up in India, it helped for young Indians to seek for job opportunities. So it was another advantage of boycott and Swadeshi. And the next one is it used as a weapon against British interest. Okay, so leaders, they have introduced it as a weapon against the British interest, because if Indian industries started to grow, or if Indian industries are setting up in India, what will happen? We will say no to foreign goods. So Indian products will be starting to circulate in India. Then how British people can take our money to their country, or our wealth and our resource to their country? So it was a big check against the interest of the British. So it was the third advantage of boycott movement. Now let's move to the third method introduced by assertive nationalists. Third method is national education. What is meant by national education here? So how national education can be used as a tool or method against the British? Let's see it. The first point says that its aim was to replace the government controlled universities and colleges. So one of the main interest, or one of the main aim through national education was to replace the government controlled universities and colleges. And for that purpose, what the assertive nationalist leaders did, do you know that? Because they have tried to influence the students, because youngsters, they will get fascinated to these kinds of ideology like nationalism, love towards one's own country. Those kinds of ideology will be circulated among the students very fast, rather than circulating among the elders of the society. So that's why these leaders were focusing on youngsters to come to the different ideology like assertive nationalism and freedom of the country from the British, etc. So slowly a young youth generation or youth people started to follow this national integration program. So it was one of the main aim of the national education, or through national education they thought of giving realization to the people about the importance of the freedom of our country from the British. So as a result, a number of students started to join Indian national movement. So it was one of the advantages. Then second one, national universities must be free from government control. This assertive nationalist leaders, they demanded that national university must be freedom from the government control, because if government is trying to suppress certain ideology or certain movement, certain teachings, so it is not something good for the people, and it is something against the freedom of the people. So the leaders were demanding for national university must be free from the government control. And again it is saying that a number of schools started to establish in different parts of the country, especially in East Bengal. We have already seen Bengal was a center of nationalism. So a number of schools were opened in different parts of East Bengal. And again, number of colleges were upgraded to national universities, which were free from the rules and regulation of the government. So these were some of the important impacts due to the national education. Or in other words, it can say that it can be said like national education helped to change the ideologies of the people, especially youngsters. Then one of the example is Bengal National College, which had set up in Kolkata. So there are a number of colleges which were very famous in this sector, but we are not going to all those colleges or all its activities and names in detail, but we are taking a few number of colleges and schools just for example. And again they were having a few number of aims like to spread of education or to spread education. So it was one of the main aim of these colleges and universities, and the leaders as well. Leaders, they have focused on spreading education, and the schools which is set up in different parts of the country were having the aim to spread education. Then education in vernacular language. So where the school is setting up, if it is a particular part of the country, their local language will be used to teach in the schools and colleges. Suppose if it is in Uttar Pradesh, Hindi will be used. At the same time, Urdu also will be used, because during that time in Uttar Pradesh, Urdu was so popular among the people. Then again, if it is in Tamil Nadu, in Tamil, the education will be provided. If it is in Karnataka, Kannada will be used. So, vernacular language means local languages will be used in teaching at school or colleges. So, it was one of the another aim of the national education. Now, we are going to see the fourth point, that is passive resistance. What is meant by passive resistance? Assertive nationalist leaders, they believed in non-violence or non-violent resistance and vigorous political actions. Non-violent resistance means, you know what is the meaning of non-violence, without following any kind of violent activities. And the second one, vigorous political actions means, vigorous means active political actions. Be always active. If the government is doing something wrong, be active. Protest against the government. So those kinds of measures, or they have believed in those kinds of actions against the British. They have declared it is not something like begging for rights. It's not something like begging for rights. Rather, it is something like claiming their rights. So, if we feel like, okay, people are following non-violent measures or methods to resist against the government, we will be feeling very funny, because in this 21st century, if some people are not fighting, not taking any kinds of weapons or arms to fight against the government, rather they follow very peaceful measures, means we will feel so funny. Why? Because we know that if it is possible, if we need to get something, or if we want to achieve something in our life, we need to follow violent resistance. But here they have followed non-violent. So they have explained it in some other way. So we can achieve any aim through two different measures. One is through non-violent measures and the other one violent measures. And they have told, we are actually not begging for our freedom. We are not begging for our rights, but rather than that, we are claiming our rights. Begging and claiming both are two different elements. We are begging for rights, but they have explained it like we are not begging. Actually, it's our right, and we need to claim it. So that was the main intention. What was the main objective, or it was the main measure took by the assertive nationalist leaders through passive resistance. Okay, it is not something like begging for rights, but claiming for the rights. They haven't stopped with that. They asked the people to refuse to cooperate with the government. Means, suppose just imagine I am a teacher, or I am a lawyer, or I am an advocate, or I am a businessman, or I am working in any of the government offices. If I am not ready to cooperate with the government, how the government will function? Suppose I am a postman or a postmaster. I am not delivering letters to the government offices properly. Under me there comes a number of government offices. I am not ready to deliver the letters and other messages from the government headquarters to their offices. How the government can function? So that's why the leaders told each and every different sectors of the society can contribute something from their side. Make some sacrifices for your country. You may be thrown out of your job. You may be getting fired from your office, but don't worry about it. You also have contributed something for your nation. Again, they have demanded to boycott government services, schools and colleges. People were not ready. Students were not ready to join the school or colleges. The different people who were rendering their services under different sectors of the government, they were not ready to render their service. They were not ready to go to office. So all these activities made a great impact in India as per the instruction of the assertive nationalist leaders. Aims, in order to achieve these aims, they have introduced three different methods or three different ideology. That is, they advocated self-confidence, spirit of sacrifice and courage. So whoever very weak, they have encouraged them with self-confidence. Again, spirit of sacrifice. They asked the people to go for some kinds of sacrifice. You are contributing for your nation, your mother country. And again, courage. Whatever the government do, whatever the British can be done against you, don't worry about it. Be courageous to defend British government. So these were some of the measures under passive resistance. Again, in order to achieve this passive resistance, they have introduced different policies. Like first one, revivalism. Revivalism means revive self-respect by India's past glory. You might have noticed, if a youngster, if a young boy is joining the army, while he was joining the army, he was not having any love towards his nation. But once when he completed 1 year's training, he will be fully filled with love towards his country, and he will be ready to die for the nation. Why? Because we will in a very easy way we will say like he got brainwashed. But how it happens? In army, you might have noticed, there they will be getting chance to watch movies. The movies which they watch will be always filled with the courageous activities of the soldiers who had sacrificed their life for the nation. And the young people, when they watch it, what will be their feeling? They also filled with the love towards their nation. Same way, in order to revive the self-respect of one's country, those people were listening to the different events of India's past. When the people, they came to know about the glorious past, they filled with self-respect and they started to love their nation. So it led to the let the people to join the national movement. So revivalism. So in order to achieve this aim, the leaders of the national movement, they have brought the religious beliefs of the people together. Different religious groups, their religious beliefs were being used to bring the people together. And the best example, like in 1895, people started to celebrate Shivaji festival. It was introduced by Balagangadhara Tilak. And again, other leaders, they have introduced some other national heroes like Rana Pratap, Shivaji. So all these national heroes and their stories were really inspiring the people, or these national heroes helped to inspire people to fight for the country. So that's what is meant by revivalism, looking back to the glorious past of the country. So in the case of India, these festivals, and through these festivals, different national heroes were being praised, and it led to inspire, or it helped to inspire people to fight for the country. Now the second stage after revivalism, what happened? Now it was the period of personal sacrifices. A person who filled with self-respect, he will be having certain other qualities like self-reliance, ready for self-sacrifice, ready for suffering, and ready for any hardships. So it was an impact. A person who is filled with the love towards nation, or the person who is undergoing revivalism, filled with the glorious past of one's own country, he will be having these qualities like self-reliance, self-sacrifice, ready for suffering, and ready for any hardships. So it was a second stage due to the revivalism. Then from there the third stage comes mass involvement. So when number of people started to follow, when number of people were filled with these kinds of feeling towards the nation, it led to a mass involvement. Like hard faith in the strength of masses can attain freedom only through mass actions. Because when people found one another filled with self-respect, self-confidence, and ready to sacrifice and ready to suffer any kind of hardships, it created a kind of powerful strength in the minds of the people, and it led to form the mass involvement or mass movement. And the people were knowing, once if the national freedom movement started to form or take the form of mass movement, they were knowing that through mass movement the freedom of the country is possible. they can attain freedom through mass movement or mass actions. So it was the third stage. So first revivalism started, and the individuals who filled with revivalism, they have got certain qualities, and those people who filled with respect, self-respect and self-confidence, ready for any kinds of sufferings, and it led to the formation of mass movement. So it was the third one, which comes under passive resistance. This massive or mass involvement influenced people by their sacrifices and suffering. So when the people filled with self-respect, they have seen those leaders who had sacrificed their life for the mother country. So it influenced the people. So these are the three important points which comes under passive resistance: revivalism, personal sacrifice, and mass involvement. When the assertive nationalist leaders implemented these different measures against the British people were not simply sitting, but they have reacted to the national movement. How was what was the reaction from the side of the British government? Let's see. The leaders were sentenced to imprisonment. Even our number of leaders, including Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, we take the example of any leaders, all those people have got imprisoned in different periods of the time of international movement. And second one, censored the newspapers. Newspapers were not having any rights to publish news against the British administration or the British government. So all the newspapers were being censored by the British government. Again, prohibited mass meetings. The British administrative officials, they were knowing that mass meetings are the reason behind these kinds of movement against the British. So that's why they have prohibited the mass meetings, and mass meetings were being declared as punishable offense. So that's why people were not able to go for group gatherings or mass meetings. And the last point, precautions against the nationalist associations. We have already seen there were a number of associations which were functioning under the international